Who grandparents fight in WW2, and what stories did they share? Both my grandfathers served in the US Army Air Force. One was a waist gunner on a 17. He caught some shrapnel from a German gun on mission and almost pulled out on the return trip. While he was in the hospital, his plane was shot down. The other was who would tell us about busting heads in bars. My granddad was in WW2 in a tank destroyer unit. He never talked about it, but when I got back from a trip to Paris in high school, he asked if it was still all blowed up over there, and said the last time he was there, it was a big old mess. My paternal grandfather landed on Omaha on day. That is it. That is all he ever shared. We know he spent the duration of the war in Europe, but whatever he saw or did was too much to ever tell my grandmother, dad, or uncle. None at all. My grandpa went to Europe as a teenager, and it must have been messed up because he never talked about his experience all the way up to his death. He came back with 3 medals, and nobody in the family knows what he did to get them. Was a sniper in the Pacific. One of the best stories was of a cocky officer who showed up and lined all the infantry up on the beach to tell them they were a bunch of pansies and he was going to whip them into shape. These men had been seeing hand-to-hand combat for months. The officer finally said, "If there's a man on this beach that thinks he can whip my ass, take 1 step forward." Every man took a step forward immediately. Didn't say much after that. My grandpa on my dad's side was 17 at the time and lied about his age to get into the Navy. He played saxophone in the Navy band aboard ships in the Pacific. I don't think he ever saw action, though, aside from that 6-act action, of course. Share until he got Oshima. Didn't remember me and thought I was one of his Navy buddies. Then he reminisced about splitting the jaws of Japanese dead soldiers open to get their gold teeth. Said some weren't all the way dead when he did it. War. My Austrian grandfather was drafted into the Wehrmacht, and his unit was integrated into this in 1944. He was wounded in January 45 in the Battle of the Bulge whilst carrying out an attack on our position. He got patched up by the Americans whilst the German officer wrote a letter home that he was missing in action. He still has the original letter. He was a prisoner of war in France from then on and had to stay until 46 or 47, as he was captured as a member of this, and they were held longer than regular Wehrmacht soldiers. He still holds a grudge against the Nazis for stealing his youth, and still has some shell or bullet fragments in his chest as far as I know. Cheers to the Americans for saving. My grandpa was in the army. He never spoke about his service, but he was shot in the ankle and captured. He spent years in a hospital once. He returned to the States. I heard second-hand stories about the power camp, specifically how the guards would smoke cigarettes and then intentionally flick the butts just out of reach of the prisoners inside the fence. He and his buddies devised a tool to reach out through the fence and grab the butts when the guard turned their back. They then passed the butt between them to get a tiny puff. He was very kind, very quiet, very intelligent, who had a very bad drinking problem. My grandfather was a trained medic, not front line, but where they took immediate survivors. The Germans were known so sabotage train bridges, and it was standard protocol to stop and inspect them before crossing. Well, his conductor was drunk and not only didn't stop, but was speeding into the bridge when it exploded. My aunt has the pictures, but let's just say the rubble. He was found under wooden trains don't just derail. They shatter, especially off a bridge. It was crazy. He described it to me, and I wanted to cry. He lost many friends.